the reason I call it a great glass ceiling is if you want to get past, you got to break that glass ceiling. In a way, you have to break yourself. Be honest with yourself and figure out where you need to change and break those pieces of comfort. What makes people avoid change is their fear of messing up what is comfortable to them. That's the most hard part of change management, because you know what can be comfortable to somebody doesn't have to be positive to them, but it's what they know. Why is my comfort live there? What is my fear that's holding me back? That was the moment, and getting through that and being able to take that from, I think at that point, being about 600,000 in revenue back down to 300,000, reshuffling, and then grow that back up, that I realized I can do this in any moment, as long as I'm honest with myself about where I am the factor that is causing the lack of success. I think that's the fallacy. I think that's what people see from the outside. I remember signing the paperwork for the bank to get the money to buy the South Africa companies. And I was driving home, the same house that I have today. And I think I had a full-on anxiety attack. You know, I'm challenged every day as a CEO. What I can tell you is that my imposter syndrome will start to creep back in as we grow and the team grows more. And I'm continued to ask to make decisions that I'm not educated in making. And so I have to spend a lot of time making. And so those will be some of those moments in which we have to ask, you know, there'll be questions about, am I the right person? And that'll be its own glass ceiling. At some point, there's a chance that I don't end up at the answer that, yes, I'm the right person. There is that chance. Now, I'm a pretty confident individual, so I haven't gotten there yet. But I always think about that. It's like, is there going to be this moment in which I decide that I'm not the right person to lead the charge? My confidence has grown tremendously, and I'm not talking about the facade of confidence. I had to have a facade of confidence for a time period. And I think the 22-year-old me had more of a facade of confidence than the today me, that I'm very comfortable in who I am. It is a comfort in yourself, a comfort in who you are. I think that's really important. It's not just a success of an entrepreneur, but just as we get older, as we are asked to be parents, as we're asked to be leaders, as we're asked to evolve and be the next generation.
This is the Business Philosopher Within You podcast. I'm your host, Bhavesh Naik. A question we often explore on this podcast is whether leaders can evolve as fast as the organizations they build. Because at some point, every founder hits a ceiling. The strategies that got you here stop working. The business is ready for its next level and something has to change. Today's guest calls these moments glass ceilings. Matt Lescault is the founder and CEO of TydeCo, a global consulting and cloud technology firm that began in a college attic with $1,500. Today, it has grown into a multinational advisory group with more than 120 employees across the US, Canada, and South Africa. He is a systems-driven leader who has navigated mergers, rapid growth, and his own evolution along the way. I'm so happy to have you on this podcast, Matt.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
And a special shout out to you, our listener. Hey, listen, we're not just a podcast. We are a movement, and you are the business philosopher. We learn from each other and grow with each other. Please remember to like, subscribe, follow, share, and comment. But most important, ask and answer questions. Thank you for tuning in. So, Matt, take us back to that dorm room. $1,500 startup, right? And you starting a company. And we're going to talk about the glass ceilings a little bit, but I want to get you kind of warmed up here a little bit with your story and how you started this company that became what it is today.
So I think the story starts a little bit before that $1,500. And it wasn't a dorm room. I had a house that I had rented. It was an attic of that house. So I can't take the dorm room credit. But, I was very lucky to have gotten into a professional setting while in high school. And so I worked for a government agency in their accounting office and got to do budgets and things of that nature. And I ended up, fast forward a little bit, I ended up becoming a controller of a local construction firm. here in Maryland. And it was an organization that had been around since the 1930s. It was an organization that had had some different troubles and so forth. And so I kind of came into what would be a mess. And there was, multiple years of taxes not filed, different things with the IRS. And I had an opportunity, sort of like, in my opinion, there's only one direction to go, and that was up. So
Right.
they had a 40,000 square foot warehouse, but they weren't seeing the value, or they weren't attaining the value that it could be. And so
Sure.
as this 21-year-old guy, I was able to go into this organization and make a lot of impacts. So we went from $500,000 to about 3.6 million in revenue in 2 years.
Wow.
I was doing project management. I was doing accounting. I was negotiating with IRS and the labor department and so forth. And I remember, and one of my favorite parts of the story is I remember getting a fax from from the local government, and it said, to Matthew Lescault, Esquire. And
Right.
I'm a 21-year-old guy, and so I go to the owners. I'm like, I get a raise because I just became a lawyer. But all jokes aside, what it did was it gave me this confidence and this understanding that if I could do that, I could propel my career into offering my expertise, and maybe it wasn't even expertise at the time, but my drive, to multiple organizations.
Right.
And through that, know that as a person, as who I am, that I got bored pretty easily. And if I started my own company, it was always my destiny that I got to drive towards. And so
Sure.
that's when I actually put my resume on Craigslist. For those that remember Craigslist in the days that was actually used for things. And I got
Yeah.
offered a job, and I think I'm at 22 years old now, for 120,000 a year. But I had this like want
Yeah.
uh, of entrepreneurship. I wanted to start my own thing. And so I
Right.
went to my parents. I'm still 22. I need to get,
Yeah.
I got to get the parental blessing on what I'm going to do. So
Right.
I go to my,
Yeah.
my parents and I say, like, I have this job offer at 120,000, and I don't want to take it. I want to start the business, but
Right.
you know what? I don't have any money, so I might need some money from you. So my mom goes, that's more money than your dad is making right now. You can't turn that down. You can't do that. And my dad looks at me and goes, you go do you.
Wow.
And
Yeah. That's a blessing.
yeah, no, it was
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
was this moment. And so I took that $1,500 because I said to my dad, I said, like, I need some money. I got to get a lawyer. I got to put some things into
Yeah.
place. I got to
Right.
incorporate. I got to do basic things. And so he gave me that $1,500. But I had no clients yet. This is all the dream and the thought.
Right.
And that's how the business started. And
Yeah.
I went, well,
Yeah.
I got a job by posting on Craigslist. So why don't I just post
Yeah.
services on Craigslist? So the
Yeah.
way that the
Yeah.
company started was me posting free ads for bookkeeping services on Craigslist. And we went from 0 to $500,000 in revenue in 18 months by doing that.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the beginning.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
the origin of where we are today.
Absolutely. And I'm getting flashbacks here as you're talking about all these things. Not just Craigslist, but fax, right? Someone sent you a fax. And I can't even remember what faxes look like, right? So
They weren't
and
pretty.
they weren't pretty, right? Right. Yeah, there's all kinds of movie scenarios where, someone sends someone a fax and, it doesn't get picked up, and, the stuff breaks loose. And so, yeah. So, and and again, yeah, I think you're blessed to have a parental figure, a parent, an actual parent who basically says, go ahead and do you at the age of 22,
Now,
because a lot of us don't have that. So,
I think
that.
I think that, and as a father, so I have a 8-year-old daughter and a 6-year-old son.
Right.
I think
Yeah.
that parents' impact the direction and the confidence of their kids in such special ways. And I
Yeah.
learned that firsthand through my parents. My
Yeah.
father was a union guy. My mother is an artist and really went towards
Mm.
her direction. She's a very
Yeah.
in the circles well-known artist here in the Washington D.C.
Right.
area. And
Uh,
so I grew up with people that chased their dreams and what mattered to them, and that's
yes.
huge.
Yeah. Absolutely. And here you are, not just chasing your dreams, but having it realized,
Oh, I'm chasing them.
right?
I continue every day to chase those dreams.
Yes. Yeah. And then it's a never-ending chase, and that's the best part about it, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So here you are, you're 120 employee companies, you are in 3 countries, and you have multiple offices. And so you're not a $1,500 startup yet at this point.
No, not
You're
at this
not
point.
anymore. All right. So, how you got there is something that we want to talk about. And we
Yeah,
talked about this idea of glass ceilings, right?
absolutely.
So you grew to $500,000 in 18 months. And when do you think you hit your first glass ceiling?
Right then.
Oh, really?
Right then.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
you understand, at 22 years old, I
Yeah.
knew nothing. I mean,
Right.
like maybe
Right.
less than nothing.
Yeah.
And so, but
Yeah.
I've always been really blessed, I guess is the best way to put it. But I've been really lucky to have great mentors throughout my life.
Sure.
People that I could look to and cared about my success and told me how it is, but also helped guide through that. But, if you've met any entrepreneur, we're all stubborn
Yeah.
and we want to do it our
Yes.
way.
Yeah.
So you have the mentors
Yeah.
that try to tell you, and then you do it your own way, and you fail, and you go and you knock back on that door, and you say, you know what, you're right. That was the wrong path. But
Yeah.
that first glass ceiling was there right after that 18 months. So
Right.
I had grown to 500,000, and I went directly into this thought process that I'm going to emulate how accounting firms, CPA firms are built. So I went and got
Right.
office space, and I went and hired people, and I thought about this third model. That's, back in the day and how we did it. Like a third of the
Hmm.
billable rate is what you pay. But I wasn't confident enough to go and charge enough. So I was like charging like $45 an hour. So the third, I had to pay people $15 an hour, and quality wasn't there. I couldn't attract the right people. And so I've always been good at generating revenue. But what I
Right.
saw was this, like for every client I would get, I'd lose a client because we weren't really operating within a good quality of service infrastructure. And so that first
Sure.
glass ceiling was this idea of like, okay, I'm here. I have
Hmm.
revenue. I figured out
Right.
part of this, but I'm
Right.
not succeeding. I'm not making much myself. I'm paying other people, and I don't
Right.
really feel like I'm succeeding. And it was the
Yeah.
first moment in which I realized there was a degree of failure of what I was experiencing. And uh, if we think about this, I just want to give time frames, just
Sure. Yeah.
just so
Please.
we're on the same page. So I
Yeah.
incorporated my business in October of 2006. I
Right.
left that construction firm in early 2007, call it July 2007. By late 2018 into 2008 into 2000, early 2009, I had gotten Class A office space. I had 7 to 10 people working for me, and I hit this glass
Hmm.
ceiling. And I was
Yeah.
making like $20,000 a year myself. Now, luckily, I was
Yeah.
young. I'm still like
Yeah.
23, going maybe on 24. I
Hmm.
didn't have any bills. I didn't have kids. I didn't have anything I had to worry about. So I could make ends meet. But it was this moment in which I realized that I wasn't truly succeeding, and I almost gave up.
Right. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
almost gave up on it. I
Mm.
was in communications and conversations with a firm who had offered to take on the clients, hire me,
Yeah. Right.
and take that burden off of me.
Right.
They weren't
Right.
going to pay me anything besides a guaranteed
Yeah.
salary. I think they had
Sure.
offered me like
Sure.
60,000 a year,
Hmm. Hmm.
and I had this like moment in time, and I said, "Do I do I think I can do better than 60,000 a year right now? And do I
Mm.
think that I have the ability to figure this out?"
Yeah.
And what I realized is that I had to change my own mentality. So when I think about glass ceilings, going back to what
Okay.
we're talking
Sure.
about, is glass
Yeah.
ceilings are typically self-imposed. So the reason I
Mm.
call them glass ceilings is because you can see through
Yeah.
them. Okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
you you hit them, you can
Right.
see the next phase afterwards. But do you
You're
have
feeling the pain.
the ability
Yeah.
to break and to kind of
You're right.
break
Right.
yourself,
Sure. Sure.
break who you
Yeah.
are, break how you think about it, and change? Because that's what it's all
Yes.
about. Like, as an
Yeah.
entrepreneur, as somebody that guides through it, this is not a perfect world. And there is moments in life in which we have to completely self-reflect and say, am I doing this in a way that's going to get me to the next level?
Yeah.
And so that was that first moment in which I said, no, I'm going to break myself. And so what I
Yeah.
did
Yeah.
was I got rid of most of my staff and at
Uh-huh.
least half of my clients. I retained a
Yeah.
couple key staff members, and I changed my business model. I went to completely virtual. I increased
Yeah.
my rates. I kept the clients that made sense, and
Yeah.
I dug in a special kind of way,
Yes.
like just doing
Yeah.
like all the work. I remember being up until 3 a.m. doing work and accounting work, like bookkeeping and everything. I was
Right.
getting to
The
clients'
the
place.
billable stuff,
Yeah.
the work. Right.
And so for me, that was the moment, and getting through that and being able to take that from, I think at that point being about 600,000 in revenue back down to 300,000, reshuffling,
Yeah.
and then grow that back up. That I
Yeah.
realized I can do this in any
Yeah.
moment
Yeah. Right. Right.
as long as I'm
Right.
honest with myself about where I am the factor that is causing the lack of success.
Yes. And Matt, I want to get into that a little bit because this is a tremendous example of self-awareness. And you are in your 20s, early 20s, and you hit upon this. It is probably because of your upbringing, background, somehow. But a lot of us don't have that some kind of self-awareness. If we do have it, it is kind of it's covered up by our ego, right? And you talked about this a little bit, right? This, you have a mentor who is saying, don't do this or do this, and we don't hear it, we don't listen, right? And then you talked about the glass ceiling. Glass ceiling is something that you see through, and but it is transparent. It's clear, but you feel the pain,
Yep,
right? So because you're hitting against it, right? So and that's kind of what you're describing there, right? So,
absolutely.
and you said that you had to break yourself down. Is that a term you used, that you had to kind of break yourself?
Well, I
Yeah,
was talking about more about, if the reason I call it a great glass ceiling is if you want to get
yeah,
past, you got to break that glass ceiling. In a way, you have to
right.
break yourself. I'm not saying that you have
Oh,
that.
okay.
Some people would hear break yourself as a very uh, negative way about it.
Right,
Think
right.
about it more as in a change. Be honest with yourself and figure out
Yeah,
where you need to change, and
right.
and break those comfort, those pieces of comfort. Because really, what
Yeah,
what
yeah.
makes people avoid change is their fear of messing up what is comfortable to them. That's
Yes,
that's
yes.
the
Yeah,
that's the most
yeah,
hard part of change management, because
yeah.
what can be comfortable to somebody doesn't have to be
Mm,
positive to them, but it's what they know.
right. That is a profound statement. Something that is uncomfortable doesn't have to be positive to you, but it is something that you have to know,
Yeah.
that this is where my comfort is,
And
and I
why
need
is
to
it
break
there?
through.
And why
And
is
why
it
is
there?
it there?
Why is my comfort live there? What is my
Yeah.
fear that's holding me back?
Yes. And what was it for you, Matt,
I mean,
in this moment?
in that moment, I think my fear was doing it differently than than what was the norm. And
Yeah.
and it is actually one of the greatest lessons that I learned, is like,
Uh-huh.
and I've taken it throughout my entire career since then, is like, no, being different is what actually propels us as entrepreneurs. If we're just the same
Absolutely.
as everybody else, what are
Yeah.
we bringing to the table?
Exactly.
But if we
Exactly.
can show how we're different, how we differentiate the business, the
Hmm.
message, the person,
Yeah.
the story, the whatever,
Right.
then there's something to hold on to. Now, being different doesn't mean that everybody's going to agree with it, but it means that you
Yeah.
have something that resonates with you and makes you unique.
Yes.
And I have
Yeah.
I have a real belief. Everybody in this world, every individual in this world does have a unique, something very unique about themselves. And if
Yeah.
they can figure out that thing that's unique,
Yeah.
they can propel to the stars. But most
Yeah.
people find it very hard to identify their unique thing.
Sure. Sure. Yeah. And identifying the unique thing, there is also the other part of it. So once you identify it, you have to execute from that. Meaning that you have to build systems and structure. Like, we're not even talking organizational structures or hiring people, just ways of doing things where you actually acting from that new level or your difference or what your gift may be. You putting words in your mouth, but your strengths, right? And you operating from that, and uh, and then that becomes another comfort zone issue where so, and because something doesn't work or something falls apart, and then you kind of go back into your comfort cocoon, if you will, and you begin to doubt yourself and things like that, right?
Absolutely.
Is that a part of that?
Absolutely. Look,
Yeah.
imposter syndrome, I'll say this. I
Hmm.
assume everybody knows what imposter syndrome is, but it's when you feel like you're not able or capable to be in the position that you're in. Okay. But I
Yeah.
assume most
Yeah.
people know this.
Sure.
I think as an entrepreneur, and maybe not even just as an entrepreneur, but as somebody that's trying to grow and scale themselves individually, whether a business
Hmm.
owner or somebody that's trying to be an executive within a big corporation or whatever that looks like. If you
Sure.
haven't experienced or don't experience
Yeah.
imposter syndrome at some point, you're
Right.
not trying in a way.
Yes.
Because I can
Yes.
tell you that I've experienced it, and that's part of this glass ceiling conversation. I've experienced this numerous times throughout my
Uh-huh.
career. I've experienced it
Right.
recently, and I expect to experience it again.
Yeah. Yeah. And what was your? I think you might have said it, but I want to kind of anchor this. What was your strength that you had identified that is unique to you, your unique talent?
You know, you may not like this answer.
Uh,
I don't
That's
know.
okay.
I don't
Oh,
completely know because I think that
yeah.
sometimes it's subconscious to the individual.
Yes. Yeah.
My guess is that
Uh-huh.
it's a willingness to fail.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Right.
So I don't think,
And that's huge.
yeah, I don't think I'm the
Yeah.
smartest person out there. I don't think
Yeah.
that I'm the most
Yeah.
capable person out there, but I think I'm somebody that has always said failure's possible.
Hmm.
Let's get close and see if we can if we can navigate through it. Because again, if you're not getting close to failure at times, you're not pushing yourself. And
Sure.
I've never been too afraid of that to try to push
Yeah.
forward. Now, if you fast
Yes.
forward my story, I went to South Africa
Yeah.
on maybe not a whim, but I heard a company was looking to sell. I went there to negotiate a letter of intent, and I
Right.
had no idea how I was going to pay for the company, quite frankly.
Right. Mm.
I signed
Yeah.
the letter of intent and had
Yeah.
to come back to the States and start pondering, how am I going to get the money for this? And it
Uh,
wasn't so much of like, some people hear that and they think like that ego and everything else. And for me, it was
right.
there's not a failure. I just have to figure out what my levers are to make this happen.
Sure.
But I
Sure.
also knew that by doing this, if that failure was a real option,
Yeah.
but I was okay with it because I said the
Yeah.
reward is so high that the
Yeah.
risk is worth it. And I always told my wife has always been super supportive of what I did. And I said, look,
Hmm.
if this fails, we're not going to be bankrupt as a family. We're going to be okay.
Yeah.
It's just going to be very, very
Yes.
painful.
Yeah. 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 And you hitting on something while we're talking about the South Africa angle. You're hitting on something important that we need to know what our worst case scenario is,
Hmm.
even as we venture out and do something that is kind of daring, right? So, the safety net, there's this idea of removing the safety net. But if you have a family and if you have family to feed and, you have people who depend on you, uh, there's always a, a 22-year-old can do things that a 35-year-old cannot do. When they have when they're a couple of kids,
And
right?
let's be
Family
clear,
feed.
when I acquired the companies in South Africa, when I went there and signed that LOI, I had a child. So
Wow.
let's make sure that it's clear that
Yeah.
I've been
Yeah.
on the I don't have any dependents to worry about, and on the other side being like, huh, okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm risking a lot more than I have in the past.
Absolutely. Yes. And the thing is that, this risk averseness, if you can call that, to the person who is in that, playing the role of being, what the world sees as the risk averse person, right? Or the risky person, or, to that person, it doesn't look like that or feel like that. Meaning that if you're a risk taker, you're just doing the things that make sense to you. And you are, right?
I
World may see it as a risky move, but so
I think
is
that's the
that true, or is
fallacy.
it you?
I think that's the
Yeah,
fallacy. I think that's
yeah,
what people see from
uh-huh,
the outside.
yeah,
I
yeah, yeah,
remember signing the paperwork for the bank to
mm,
get the money to buy the South Africa
right,
companies,
yeah,
and I was driving home, the same house that I have today.
right,
Um, and I think I had a full on anxiety attack in that car,
mm,
being like, I just signed this. I have
wow,
just
yeah,
committed this. I never took on debt, you know, before I did the first acquisition before South Africa in the acquisition in South Africa. I had
yeah,
spent almost 15 years of my business career being able to build without ever taking anybody else's money besides my
yeah,
parents.
mm-hmm,
And I
yeah,
did this, and I remember I was like, am I having a heart attack right now? No, I was in
mm,
a moment of anxiety. But then again, luckily I've always had a degree of ability to think things through. I like Cookie
yes,
Monster, stop
uh-huh,
and think it through. I
yeah,
think is
yeah,
Cookie Monster's favorite saying, or at least when I was growing up,
uh-huh,
and calm down pretty quickly. But I do remember that and just being like, "Holy moly, what did I just sign up for?"
yeah, yeah,
And I tell people to this day, I was like, I had no idea what I was signing up for. Like, I
yeah,
went from being this company here in the US, local company, 30 people, to buying a company in another country. And I've never dealt with
yeah,
anything international, never dealt with anything. And it has been such a learning experience. It's been
yes,
not even 4 years. And what I learn
yeah,
every day shocks me. It
mm,
is, and
yeah,
it's amazing. Like at the same time, I have that stress, but I have this like real appreciation for the experiences that I have been able to take on because of this journey, and that's what I
yes,
think is so amazing about
yeah.
it. And so, I know we've
Sure.
gotten a little bit away from glass ceilings, in this
I think we kind of,
conversation,
yeah,
but
yeah, yeah, and I think we're still talking about that a little bit because you broke through a comfort zone here. You just describing the inner experience of someone who has broken through a comfort zone in a way. But, that anxiety attack is probably, I'm assuming that maybe coming from the comfort zone, having broken through a comfort zone, something you didn't do before,
yeah,
never taken a debt before. Now I'm taking a debt to do an acquisition, not in United States, but in South Africa, different culture, different everything, right? And different laws, I'm assuming, the different logistics. And you made an acquisition. You got to make this work now. And then the anxiety attack. I have to believe that that's kind of outside the comfort zone
yeah,
for you.
absolutely. Um,
Yeah, so
I don't want to harp too much on that. It was a brief
yeah,
moment,
yeah,
but
sure, sure,
I'm a pretty transparent person. If people ask me,
yeah,
how I feel and
yes,
the emotional
yeah,
toll that things take on, I like to be forthright because I think part of learning and one of the things that's been really valuable for me and the mentors that I've had and so forth is that honesty around how
sure,
things have impacted them. And so I've always been
yeah,
somebody
yeah,
that's been transparent about how things have impacted me. But there were so
absolutely,
many moments in business before ever getting into opportunity to South Africa that made me have to rethink change, hit those glass ceilings. And it's been this amazing journey for me that's helped me to grow, has also highlighted some moments of true failure for myself, whether that's small moments of how I interacted with people or how I managed people, or larger interactions of decision making that I did, and how that impacted our bottom line, top line, and so forth.
Yeah.
Entrepreneurship is not perfect, and we go into
Yes.
this, and I think everybody wants to tell a story about how great they are. And I
Yeah.
want to tell a
Yes.
story about the true journey of what it is to try to be great. Because I'm not great, but I continue to strive to try to get there, and to set myself separately, and set really my company. Because another
Yeah.
real, and I'm going on a tangent here, another real thought process of mine is like, I'm nothing without the people that are around me. My biggest
Yeah. Yeah.
assets are the people that I
Yeah.
have, those 119, if we use 120, we're having
At this
those
point. Yeah.
119 individuals that are with me. What what happens if I don't have them? Nothing.
Yeah. So, Matt, let's go back to the idea of glass. And I want to come to that because that's powerful. I think you're starting to open up this other whole new dimension about not just me, but my people, right? Or the people, right? People who work within an organization. The $600,000 glass ceiling, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you broke through and you moved beyond that.
Yeah.
Was there a change of belief system that you put in place? So I just kind of want to go into that transition a little bit. We also, you had also talked about that in that South Africa transaction where, you do something for the first time. It's out of the comfort zone. It has emotional, sensory
Yeah.
reactions within the body. And then you move beyond that. And then maybe that becomes a new belief system. It's a new way of operating. And then hopefully that becomes your next floor, maybe,
Yeah.
ceiling and floor, right? So, what was the new belief system that allowed you to get beyond that $600,000
Before I go there, I want to
glass
give a
ceiling?
shout out. So I started this
Oh,
company with my best friend, a
okay,
guy by the name of
sure,
Ryan Walterman. We
yeah,
went to high school together. We were both in the
yeah,
band. We both played French horns. And
yes,
we decided to start this company together. And so when we had that $1,500 and we went on to Craigslist, it was me and him doing this
right,
together. And when we hit the glass ceiling, it was us together deciding. Like
yeah,
he would have come on the same path of that
right,
60,000. He would have, you know, he had to sign off on anything we did. And so
yeah,
he's a big reason why we continued and broke through these glass ceilings. So I want to be very clear
sure,
about that. There's
yeah,
never just one
yeah,
individual that is driving this.
of course,
Um, so we hit that 600,000. We decide to get rid of the offices. We bring it down to almost 300,000 in revenue,
right,
and we really shift our business model at that point.
yeah,
Okay, we go
yeah,
into a completely virtual. I mentioned this earlier. A completely
mhm,
virtual model, and really what happened is that Ryan had his clients and staff that work with him. I had my clients and staff that work with me, and we kind of operate as two different businesses within the same business.
sure,
Um, but it worked in that moment well because we could sort of drive the overall goal, and our individual goals of where we wanted to take it.
sure,
Um, and so we spent the next 3 years building it back up, but we were able to get to 1.2 million. We were able to get to 2
hmm,
million. We were able to get to 2.4 million. That happened over about the next 6-ish years. We hit about 2.4
sure,
million. I think it was late 2015 or early 2016. And that was really
sure,
our next glass ceiling.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, mm,
Um, and from my perspective, it was, and I see this with a lot of businesses, that 1.2 to
yeah,
2.4, but really that 1.2, you go from being this disorganized business that can kind of
hmm,
be everything, wear every hat that you need to wear, to really having
sure,
to create process and infrastructure and so forth.
yeah,
Um, and we really struggled with that.
mm, yeah,
I'm an
yeah,
idea guy. I'm a vision
right,
guy. I
right,
understand what processes need to go in. I understand systems. I can get
right,
things to like 40, 50, 60%, but then I get
yeah,
bored. And I've
yeah,
always known that I needed the right infrastructure, the right people around me
sure,
to, uh, to really help through that, process to be
Sure.
the yin to my yang, if you want to put it that way, but to
Sure.
complement us.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever dealt with or went down the path of the idea of behavioral profiling within the business workforce,
A
and
little bit. Yeah. All the analysis.
yeah.
Yeah. Diskin, Myers-Briggs, and all the rest of it.
We used a product called Predictive Index, which was EEOC
Sure.
compliant, things of that nature, to
Yeah.
really, and I got
Yeah.
trained in it, to really understand how different people operate and the why they operate and so forth. And it really
Right.
at that
Sure.
time helped me understand what my strengths and weaknesses were, but also what other people's strengths and weaknesses, and how you marry people together to have a
Sure.
balanced team.
Right.
Side note on that. But
Sure.
we hit this glass ceiling because both myself and Ryan were more your visionary strategy people. We weren't
Right.
really a yin to a yang.
Sure.
And so I think that really stifled us from a growth perspective, is because the two
Right.
of us were kind of similar in a lot of ways. In fact, I
Sure.
think we both took
Yeah.
the behavioral assessment, and we both were pretty much very
Yeah.
similar in our behavioral profile.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Um,
Yeah.
But if we
I want to get to that later, but yeah, that's great, because you can do a podcast just on that. Just
absolutely,
1 hour conversation. But sorry, go ahead. My
absolutely.
apologies.
In a
Yeah.
rewind, in mid to late 2007, my cousin, who is now my current business partner, had come into the business.
Mhm.
And he really learned and grew up within in the company. And through this growth and everything else, he became my right-hand man when it came to executing on the clients.
Sure.
I had my clients, but he was like my manager. So
Yeah.
oversaw the team, everything else. I went and handled the clients, things like that. And we were
Yeah.
a really good match in our kind of
Mm.
personality, our profiles, our focus, and so forth.
Sure.
And so we grew a team together. And I think,
Right.
unfortunately, Ryan never found that person that really balanced for him.
Right. Sure.
So we get to 2017, and I would say, Ryan had kids a lot earlier than I did. I'm not
Mhm.
so sure that I would have succeeded if I had the same responsibilities at the same time, because
Yeah.
it was a lot. And it
Yeah.
was determined that, he decided that he wanted to find a different path.
Sure.
And
Sure.
so he exited the business, and I won't get
Yeah.
into the details of like the terms and everything else,
Sure.
but he
That's okay.
exited the
Yeah.
business. And at the same time, Joseph, my current business partner, my cousin,
Yeah.
came in as an owner to the business.
Mm. Yes. Right.
And in that moment, immediately, there's two major decisions. And this
Yeah.
goes back to glass ceilings. I had a point here.
Yeah.
I'm just
Yeah. Yes.
navigating
I know
through
you do.
navigating through the story.
Yeah.
Is we had really two major decisions that impacted the rest of our future to today.
Sure. Yeah.
One
Yeah.
was, we're not going to have me have my own clients and Joseph has his own clients, as me and Ryan did. I'm going to handle strategy, vision, kind of operations from an internal perspective,
Sure.
and he's going to handle client services. So
Okay.
I'm
Yeah.
growth,
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm sales,
Yes.
he's execution.
Yeah.
So that was the
Yeah.
first thing, because what we did
Yes.
then is we looked at the client base and we said, well, we have different rates for different clients. We made uniformity around rates, uniformity around delivery, uniformity around. Joseph did that.
Yeah. Yeah.
The second decision is we
Yes.
said, QuickBooks is today. We
Mhm.
need to find that product of tomorrow.
Right.
And so that's when we decided to invest in the idea of being Sage Intact partners.
Right. So QuickBooks and Sage, for our audience, I think there are two accounting software systems, basically.
So
right?
QuickBooks is what I would call a small business solution built
Right.
for small businesses, has the
Yeah.
number one market share in the U.S.,
Right.
is a great product for those organizations. But even back then in 2018, when we made this decision, in my opinion, what the future technology was going to do was going to create what we did or turn what we did into really transactional type services and not value-based services. And
Sure.
that the smallest clients, and that we serviced a lot, the smallest clients really looked at us as a cost center, as like
Yeah.
a have to have to be compliant, but not a value
Sure.
add where they wanted to really invest money into.
Yeah.
And it was our thought that like if we could find a next higher up product, so Sage Intacct, I looked at Sage Intacct, Microsoft Dynamics, and NetSuite
Mm-hmm.
at that time,
Right.
and made a
Yeah.
decision for Sage Intacct
Okay.
as a what we call an ERP and enterprise resource planning software, but really what you would say is
Yeah.
a accounting solution for upper SMB, small business. I should say
Small,
small
medium
businesses
size.
and mid size, upper
Yeah.
SMs and the
Yeah.
MBs.
Sure. Sure. Yes.
and that decision, we had no idea at the time, is the number one decision that has probably cascaded into everything else that's happened.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
the companies that we bought in South Africa, just to wrap this all up, were
Yeah.
Sage Intacct partners in Africa, Middle
Ah.
East.
Right. Right.
So if we think
Yeah.
about this now, so
Yeah.
the glass ceiling there in 2017 was a realization that the business model and the way
Mm-hmm.
that we had it and the way that the partners were structured
Yeah.
was not scalable. Now,
Right.
I'm going to tell you something I don't tell a lot of people. At that
Mm-hmm.
time, before Ryan left the business, I was working like 20 hours a week. I
Mm-hmm.
was no, making good money.
Yeah.
I was streaming shows every day. I'd work my 4
Mm-hmm.
hours.
Yeah.
My wife thought I was lazy. Uh,
Jeez. Guy who works 20 hours a day.
a week, no, a week, 20 hours a week.
Oh, it's 20 hours a week. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
no,
Okay.
no.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
I
Right.
was
Right.
not
Okay.
working much. I was making good
Ah.
money, but I
I
was
misunderstood.
getting
Yeah. Okay.
really
Yeah.
bored.
Yeah.
I was getting
Yeah.
really
Yes.
bored. And
Yeah. I want to talk about that a little bit because that's a tremendous accomplishment for a business leader. It just when you first said it, I didn't register it. I thought it was 20 hours a day.
no,
20 hours a week.
20 hours a week. Well, trust me, I haven't seen that
Yeah.
since. So, like, it might have been
Okay.
a tremendous accomplishment at the time, but since then,
Yeah.
now I'm like, if I don't work 20 hours a week, I'm doing good.
Yeah.
I'm working more than and so is Joseph, working way more than we should.
Yeah.
But again, we're in this growth mode. We can talk about how I perceive us as really in a startup mode. Then,
Right.
even though I say I've been in business for 19 years, my 20th anniversary is October of this year. But really, my current business, not the EIN or anything else like that, but the current structure of business is less than 4 years old. I'm in true startup mode. And we can talk about that because that's also about reinventing yourself in those moments.
Yeah, yeah. And I want to say something else that I kind of picked up on, which is that you're saying that so before and after, working 20 years, you got to that, and I call that accomplishment because a lot of leaders can't get there or won't get there, for the similar reason that you discovered for yourself that 20 hours a week boring, right?
I hated it.
Because I mean, I talk to founders, and they love being in the middle of the business and driving and running it, right? And when they there's this tug of war between stepping back and letting the organization go on its own, and then stepping back in and running the show, right? So, and any insights on that, right? It seems like there is an internal growth here also. As you broke through this glass ceiling, you kind of broke something deep inside you.
So take that concept and now do it in kind of microcosms. What I mean by that is, as an entrepreneur, at least one that starts in the attic of a house and only has himself and a business partner and then has 2 employees and then 4 employees and then 6 employees, you've worn every hat. And we have to be good at letting things go. Now, I've been accused a lot of not letting things go.
Mm-hmm.
And my argument is if I let them go, maybe you should self-reflect. Because for those people
Yeah.
that show me that I can let go, I hand it. And the point that I'm always looking at is I'm looking at
Yeah.
gaps within a company, and I'm hiring
Right.
into those gaps so it doesn't fall on me. And the answer is that if I can find opportunity to eliminate myself out of the situation and put it on
Yeah.
somebody that can do it better, awesome. My
Yeah.
problem is that when I
Yes.
see somebody not doing it at a standard that I expect, then I insert myself back into it. And that can be a
Right.
challenge. Now,
Yes.
I'll also say this. Many business owners take my path as an example,
Mhm.
go and make money and then elevate how their standard of living and have to continue to make money and elevate their standard of living and continue to have to make money. And I made a very conscious decision, and so did Joseph, by the way. We're
Yeah.
both, again, so we're
Right.
cousins. My mother, his
Yeah.
father are siblings. I think we come from a
Yeah.
very grounded upbringing, of not really needing a lot or needing flashy things. It's like we have never
Sure.
stopped to reinvest into the business and put our
Yeah.
own income off to the side because we think that this is how it's going to propel to get us to where we want to go.
Sure.
And that's another thing of like that's a different part of glass ceilings. But a lot of
Mhm.
entrepreneurs, they're chasing the money so much that they don't give themselves the ability to truly scale.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And that's a great point, right? So and so was this the last glass ceiling or is there one after this?
Let's see. So
So you had 1.2 mil. Yeah,
so
go ahead. Sorry. Yeah.
2018 happens. It takes a year to
Yeah.
um, to get enabled into Sage Intact. That's how it does. And so we don't start selling it until 2019. Um,
Sure.
but we're at that 2.4, 2.8. We're having a really hard time getting into 3 million. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what I realized, and it wasn't our glass ceiling, is
Yeah.
we were big enough that we needed real systems and real infrastructure, but we didn't
Sure.
have enough money to truly invest in real systems and real infrastructure. And
Right.
so that's when I and Joseph with me shifted into the concept of an acquisition strategy
Okay.
and saying
Yeah.
if we
Yeah.
can take lending, if we can acquire, we can grow faster and we can reinvest that. And I have to
Yes.
and through this process, I had established business dealings with some other people here locally, and
Right.
that person individually, which I'm not going to call out in this conversation. I'm not sure if
Mhm.
they would want me to, but that individual really sparked my interest in the acquisition component, and
Yeah.
drove, I think, a what's the right word? Drove this passion for it that I
Yeah.
never had before, never really considered before. And so
Right.
even though my business dealings with that individual didn't transpire um, for a long term, I think there was a pretty big impact into what my now current place, but my future at that time
Yeah.
was. And
Yeah.
so we sort of said, hey, we don't have this infrastructure. Let's try to make this infrastructure. Let's go and start this acquisition. So we did our first acquisition in 2021-ish, I think. So
Right.
like
Right.
2018, we become Sage Intact partners. We don't finish enablement until 2019. 2019, we start to go in and we go into this. We get our first client to migrate into Intact.
Sure. Yeah.
2020 happens with COVID.
Yeah.
So now
Yeah.
everything changes in what we're
Right.
doing. We come out of COVID
Yeah.
in 2021, and we start
Yeah.
looking at acquisitions at that point. And we
Okay.
make our first acquisition here in Maryland, and that was a big shift from being willing to take on debt and also learning how you incorporate people into a business and how do you
Sure.
communicate with a new client set that is used to
Yeah.
a different business owner, things of that nature.
Sure. Absolutely. And Matt, you were at about 120 people, you said, right, at
Right
this
now,
point?
yeah.
And I don't know if you're okay disclosing the revenue at this point, the ballpark.
Yeah,
It,
I'm happy to, but I think that
you don't
a
have to.
disclaimer
Right.
should come with it. So
Okay.
if you look at uh, what we do in Africa, Middle East, in our South Africa office,
Sure.
we this isn't just like a hub to support the U.S. So a lot of organizations will go and hire cheaper labor to produce revenue in North America.
Sure.
It's not what we did.
Right.
We
Yeah.
hired, we acquired businesses in South Africa that
Mm-hmm.
were Sage partners and
Ah.
and we had to maintain the Sage partnership there and the revenue. And if you
Sure.
look at the cost of living, but also kind of the rates and everything else, it's anywhere
Yeah.
between 50% to a third of what you see in the US. So what we
Got it.
charge for implementations in South
Yeah.
Africa is 50% to a third of what we charge here in the US.
Sure.
So the reason I make this clarification is because when I say that we're doing about 10 million in revenue, you have to understand that if it was all US based with 120 people, we'd probably be closer to 15 to 18 million
Oh wow. Okay.
in what we're doing. If you
Yeah,
look at
that's still
the pure statistics of it.
yes. Yeah. So at this point, do you see any glass ceiling on the horizon? And if you could predict, and we're in prediction game now, you know how that goes. What do you think it might be?
So what I would say is
Mhm.
one of the reasons I call it a glass ceiling is because you can't see it until you run into it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, what could it be? There's so many possibilities. There's so many
Yeah.
possibilities. I don't want to be this AI guy, but what I'm going to say is
Yeah.
that AI is going to transform the way we do business,
Yeah.
and it is going to create or it is going to require a degree of investment.
Yeah.
And that next glass
Yeah.
ceiling could be do us, and I'm doing more not specifically to TydeCo, to my organization, but to the wider,
Yeah.
you know, businesses that are kind of in my size bracket. Is like, do we have the ability to invest in a way that's competitive? And
Yeah.
if we don't, are we creative enough to understand how we circumvent that to break through that glass ceiling? So that's one piece. My simple answer is
Yes.
I'm already thinking and preparing about that right now for our
Yes.
organization. We already invest in a team that does AI deployment components, but we're doing it much differently than other organizations. I think a lot of the other organizations
Yeah.
are all talking about what they're deploying to their client base, and what we're doing is spending a lot of time deploying internally and understanding what is possible, and also looking at what is being mainstream, because I think such a fast paced thing that you could get you could spend a lot of money investing in something that's going to be solved by somebody else really quickly, and you
Sure.
want to be careful
Sure.
there. There's that component of
Yeah.
it. Um, I'm challenged every day as a CEO. I think that um, what I can tell you is that my imposter syndrome will start to creep back in as we
Mm.
grow and the team grows more, and I'm continued to
Yeah.
ask to make decisions that I'm not educated in making, and so I have to spend a lot of time
Yeah.
making. So those will be some of those
Sure.
moments in which we have to ask. There'll be questions about, am I the right person, and that'll be its own
Yeah.
glass ceiling. And
That
at some
is.
point,
Yeah.
there's a chance that
Yeah.
I don't end up at the answer that, yes, I'm the right person. There is that
Yeah.
chance. Now I'm a pretty
Right.
confident individual, so I haven't gotten there
Yeah.
yet. But
Yeah.
I always think about that. It's like, is there going to be this moment in which I decide
Yeah.
that I'm not the right person
Yes.
to lead the charge? And
Yeah.
I sure hope I don't get there, but
Yeah.
I it's always in the back of my mind.
Yeah. And I'm telling you, I talk to a lot of founders, a lot of leaders, and this level of transparency and being able to talk, it's this level of self-awareness. I don't see it very often. And most of the people who come on the podcast, they have that. That's why they're on the podcast, right? But there's a lot of folks that I talk to who can't bring it, right? So I really appreciate that. The level of depth you go into describing your inner, your inner landscape and how you navigate through these ideas, right? Around the comfort zone, these are difficult things to talk about for, especially for a leader. You've got 120 people who whose payrolls you're signing, right? Figuratively, at least, right? Probably not personally, but so having said that, um, one thing that I want to talk about, we can make a podcast just on this one. When maybe this is our next episode that we might do sometime in future, but about the people, right? As you are hitting your glass ceiling, the entire organization is going through the breaking of that glass ceiling. So there might be, a collection of people who might be facing that glass ceiling, but maybe cannot verbalize it or cannot articulate it, right? But the pain is there, right? They cannot see it. Any insights on how a leader like yourself, a founder like yourself, can basically keep their eyes and ears open and the feelers out as they work with people and talk to people, how to kind of spot the next glass ceiling, if there's even such a thing?
I don't know you can spot it. Well, I can tell you about the team that you have.
Yeah.
Is there's certain people that will be on that path with you.
Yeah.
And there's certain people that will decide to get off of that path with you.
Yeah.
And it's not always evident who those people are going to be.
Right.
But it's always important to me to respect their decision of when it's right and wrong for them.
Yeah.
That it's not personal unless you make it personal, in the sense of like, everybody has their own values, their own culture, and those values and that internal culture evolve over time. And that's part of human nature. And as an owner, if you can have the grace to allow those people to experience that for themselves and be happy for their decisions, whether or not that's a decision that you'd like, I think that goes a long way in trust and being able to navigate through the hard and good times of business, because it's never all fun and it's never all bad. And look, I've had people leave and come back and be successful coming back. I've had people leave and come back and be unsuccessful coming back. I've had people that I thought would be around forever that are not here anymore. And I've had people that I thought weren't going to last that are still here. And one thing that I say to everybody is, if I hire somebody, it's not I, but if the company hires somebody, we will take the time and investment to try to make them work, because there's a reason why we believed in bringing them in the first place. Now, I'm not so sure that completely answered your question. I don't know that it's about identifying the glass ceilings, but sometimes the way that we approach our life and our thought process allows us to navigate those moments that are the glass ceilings, where we lose that person that we feel like, oh my God, I can't handle it. But if we take a step back and say, yes, I can, or there's great moments in which we believe that we hired the best person and now we're going to achieve it. But those are the highs and lows, and always come back to the middle, as you're going through it, and be true to who you are.
Be true to who you are. Right. Yeah. You just kind of encapsulated that right there. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think what you're saying is, don't be forcing scenarios where there is no need to. Just let things evolve and then work with them as they do.
Yep.
Right.
Absolutely.
So, Matt, in 22-year-old Matt, right?
I don't remember him.
And Matt, right? and Matt today. What do you think is the one thing that you can point out that is the biggest shift in how you are today, or how you present yourself, or how you see yourself inside?
My confidence has grown tremendously, and I'm not talking about the facade of confidence.
You're right.
I was bullied pretty pretty bad in school and grade school and so
Uh-huh.
forth, and I lost a lot of
Right.
confidence through that process, and I
Yeah.
had to have a facade of confidence for a time
Yeah.
period. And I think
Yeah.
the 22-year-old me had more of a facade of confidence than the today me, that I'm very comfortable in who I am and very confident in who I am. And I think
Right.
that's probably the biggest change that I see now. What
Yeah.
you should do is beg my team to have somebody like my business partner who's known me since a kid come on and give his perspective, because he probably would have a
Love
much
to do that.
different perspective on that than I do.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. You speak of confidence, and in the kind of confidence, and you actually qualifying the word confidence, right? Not the confidence that comes from, for example, it may come off sounding like an arrogance, right? But the confidence that you're talking about, it comes across right here in this conversation, is the confidence that comes from humility. It's a very strange thing, right? That we're vulnerable. You may not call it that, but you
Oh,
are basically willing to be vulnerable, and that is the real strength.
yeah.
And that's the real confidence. That's what I'm seeing, right? When I hear your story. So,
And if I could,
yeah,
if I had a better
uh,
word,
yeah,
I think I have a decent vocabulary, but not as great as I wish I would. Um,
uh-huh,
Maybe confidence isn't the word, but but it is a comfort in yourself, a
yeah,
comfort in who you are,
yeah,
and
right,
I think that's really important for.
yes,
It's not just the success of an entrepreneur, but just as we get
yeah,
older, as we are asked to be parents, as we're asked
yes,
to be leaders, as we're asked to evolve and be the next generation,
sure,
so
yeah, absolutely. And Matt, you deal with change all the time, and we're not just talking about the arc. The entire arc is about change. We talked about this breaking through the glass ceilings, but also just day to day change. And what's on the horizon? We got this AI, and there's geopolitical issues that we're dealing with today, and the whole world seems like it's a very different place, and there's a lot of flux out there, right? A lot of uncertainty. And someone like you in a leadership position like you, what do you do, or where do you go to root yourself or ground yourself? It could be literally or specific or metaphorically. Is there a place you go to kind of get in touch with, you talked about being comfortable in yourself, right? The definition of confidence. How do you regain that if you ever stray away from that?
I don't have a good answer. I don't give myself
Yeah.
enough time. Um,
Uh-huh.
I am lucky and fortunate to, I think, have an innate ability to keep myself at a balance at times. But
Yeah.
at the same time, I probably actually, I'm thinking about a specific business coach right now who would say, yeah, you need to spend a little bit more time and,
Yeah.
self-reflection, maybe meditation and things of that nature. But that being said, um, I really like to focus on unity.
Hmm.
So one of our core values is better together.
Yeah.
And what we're seeing from a geopolitical thing that hurts me the most
Right.
is the amount of divisity
Yeah.
that is happening today. And that is
Right.
one thing that, when it comes to our organization, whether internal to ourselves or
Yeah.
external to those people that we collectively communicate to, is I want to drive a culture of collaboration, togetherness,
Hmm.
unification, and
Sure.
acceptance of difference of opinions.
Yeah.
And I think that helps us all stay grounded as individuals.
Yeah. 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 One of the things that I watch when leaders like yourselves do that just absolutely inspires me is when you try to kind of create a microcosm of the world that you would like to see. As in, you're in this leadership shoes and you have the opportunity to mold this organization in the way that you would want the world to be. And that's exactly what you kind of said, right? Right there.
Maybe I'll tell you something. It's the hardest
Yeah.
thing as you grow and evolve as an organization is a reality that the culture has less and less to do with me as the individual and more to do
Yeah.
with the greater organization. And so
Right.
it almost gets out of your own control, but you have to remember that you
Yeah.
do have a major influence on it. And so like
Yes.
it's not my world. It is
Yeah.
ours together, and we hope that we can bring people in that hold the same value structure, and we hope
Yeah.
that we can exit those people that we don't uh, that don't hold that same value structure, because it is hard to build and easy to destroy.
Yeah. Yes. Yes, it is. Yeah. Yeah. And Matt, is there anything that we didn't talk about today that you would like to give voice to? Anything that you wish I had asked about, but I didn't get a chance to ask?
I think we've covered a lot. I mean, I may be a talker. I may have a lot to say, and there's opportunities for other conversations, and I've really enjoyed being here and
Yeah.
having this
Yes.
conversation with you. I thought this was a very easy conversation to have, and so I
Thank you.
appreciate that.
That's,
But I don't know if there's
yeah.
anything today that sticks out as like I feel like has been left off.
Absolutely great. Yeah. Thank you for the compliment. I think when someone says this was an easy conversation, that's a tremendous compliment to a guy like me. I know you have your own podcast. I'm sure that you will appreciate when someone says, "Oh, this was a very easy conversation, right? We got
Yeah.
into it and just kind of flew." So thank you so much for being here and telling your story and telling it from the heart. You truly are a transparent person, and I love the vulnerability and the humility that you show, even as you are this person who is required and commanded to lead an organization. Those are very difficult priorities to balance, and you seem to be doing a really good job at it. So
We'll see, you know,
yeah,
but I appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me.
sure. How do we get in touch with you? And who are the kinds of people that you would like to kind of reach out to you and connect with you?
So, I think this type of podcast is not about drumming up business or finding people that want financial
Yeah,
software.
yeah,
I'm the type of person that I've been very fortunate. I think I've said this a couple different times, but fortunate to have people in my life that help guide me and mentor and so forth. And so, what I'd say is, I'm always open to conversations and always open uh, to being able to give back in the same way. Now, I'm a busy
absolutely.
individual, so
Yeah,
I don't know how many conversations I can take, but I think when you find people that you're connected to and there's a mutual value in that relationship, it can uh, be so valuable that I hope maybe that a little bit, from the business philosopher could come out.
absolutely right. And for our audience, reach out to Matt if you are looking for a mentor who you think could be useful to you,
Or maybe my next
and
mentor, like who,
or yeah, yeah, or someone who can point out the next glass ceiling that Matt hasn't seen yet, right? So
please.
there is so many. That's the problem with it, right? There could be 1,000 we can list, right? So
Absolutely.
thank you so much, man. This was an incredible conversation. I really enjoyed it, and you were a great guest. And I'm sure that if and when our audience kind of plugs in and listens to it, and if they come this far, thank you so much for listening and watching. This was a great conversation. Thank you so much.
I enjoyed it. Thank you.